Thank you very much, Chris. And thank you for another amazing event. You throw pretty much the best in the industry for this kind of thing. So my name is Sean Galbraith, and I've been a planner now for, 25 years, which is weird to say. In 2010, I started my own business focusing on small project planning, development applications, basically the stuff that was too small for the big companies to bother with, so minor variances, small rezonings, and through that I've developed a passion for multiplexes and low-rise multi-res projects, and a bit of a specialty around that. If I'm known for anything, it's two things. It's shit posting on Twitter and multiplexes, and usually it's the same thing. Chris asked me to talk about multiplexes and what to look for in properties. So the new multiplex zoning I cannot emphasize how big of a shift it is in thinking, in planning, not in like planners in general, but at the city. And Greg talked a lot about this, but for a long time, the official plan could basically be summarized, and the neighborhoods policy is, if it's not fucking there, you can't fucking build it. That's it. Like in parts of city, the old city, where we have diverse housing forms, and you could build a small apartment building in theory, and you could do multiplexes. Great, you can do more of those things. I swear a lot, sorry. And in other parts of the city, most of the city, if it's not there already, you can't build it. And that shift in thinking took a long time, because it had been in place for a very long time. It's the entire foundation of the official plan of the City of Toronto, in theory, and the zoning bylaws. And to get that changed, it took a lot of advocacy from a lot of people who are in this room, and myself, and a lot of people yelling and saying, why can't we do this? It's not, like, what is the reason why we can't do this? And there isn't a good one. And so eventually the city said, oh yeah, there isn't a good reason why we shouldn't do this. Let's just be able to do that. And so that led to the multiplex zoning changes that are really fresh. So to do that, they required two different things. First, a change to the official plan, because as Greg pointed out, the official plan is generally stupid in a lot of ways. It is contradictory in a lot of ways, and again, it can be summarized by, if it's not already there, you can't do it. And that is a lot of the city where you couldn't do this stuff. And so they had to change the official plan. And so what the changes do, it basically admits that the post-war notions of how we build neighborhoods have been a huge problem, and they contribute to the housing crisis that we have in Toronto. If the only option in most of the neighborhoods of Toronto is that you can live there only if you can afford to buy or rent an entire house, that's a problem. And so the official plan amendment changes that by saying you can do multiplexes up to 4 units, and you can have a garden suite in the backyard or laneway suite, period. You can do that. It also means that you can do it where it doesn't already exist. Again, that problem, if it's not already there, you can't do it. One of the foundational things of the neighborhoods policies is that you had to respect and reinforce the existing patterns of building types. And if there's no building type that you want to build, you can't respect and reinforce that. And so what this official plan amendment does is it gets rid of that, which is great. It was necessary. So everybody's seen this, yellow belt. Someone mentioned that someone has a yellow belt. I own a yellow belt. It was very hard to find in my size, but I can now retire it, which is great, because effectively the yellow belt it's over. Still yellow. Maybe we change the color on the map, But it captures the scale of the problem, was that for a vast, vast area of the city, you couldn't do what we all in this room want to do, period. Or even if you could do it, we made it as hard as possible. It's something I've said a number of times. It shouldn't be this hard to give the city what it says it wants. And these changes make it a little bit easier, which is great. Some of the other little changes that it did was it allows that all of the entrances to the units can face a street. If you're a zoning nerd like me, you'll know that like secondary suites weren't allowed to have an entrance. They weren't allowed the dignity of an entrance facing a street. You had to like tuck it around the back or on the side, or if you had a front basement entrance, you had to make it face the side for some stupid reason. So they got rid of that, which is great, because under the zoning bylaw, you could have the entire front wall of your multiplex entirely be front doors, so long as none of them led to a secondary suite. It was the most ridiculous policy. And it also said that you couldn't, if you wanted to build a secondary suite, you couldn't change the front wall of the house. So it just triggered unnecessary variances and added risk to the project. It was absolutely stupid. And so it's wonderful that they've finally changed this policy in the official plan so that it can be implemented in the zoning bylaw. It does include tree protection, a policy particularly around tree protection. Tree protection is going to be a significant limiting factor in multiplex development. By design, the city wants to maintain its mature tree canopy. However, there's policy in the new official plan that says that contemplates variances in the design when you are adding sustainability features or you are trying to protect a mature tree. And so you may be able to get larger variances that you may otherwise have been able to get specifically to protect trees. I call this like the long branch clause, because Long Branch is rabid about their trees. What it doesn't do, it very specifically does not encourage lot splitting or lot assembly. The policies of the official plan pertaining to the prevailing character of lot sizes and configurations still apply to multiplexes. So if you think you're going to come into a neighborhood and it's a neighborhood entirely of 50-foot lots. Everything's a 50-foot lot. And you're gonna come in and say, I'm gonna split it down the middle, 225s, no problem. Wrong, big problem. Because now you have two lots that do not maintain the prevailing pattern and size and configuration of the lots. You still, if you're looking for lots to split, you still have to look for those unusually large lots where when you split them, the resulting lots are more in keeping with what is already in the area. Those are the opportunities. There was the opportunities before, they are still the opportunities now. It doesn't override heritage protections. So if you're looking to do this in Cabbagetown or wherever there's a heritage policy, either on the specific building or in a HCD, a Heritage Conservation District, those still apply, and your design may be limited, or you may have to give special consideration for that because those still apply. It doesn't give the same allowances for multiplexes to oneplexes, to your McMansions and your single-family houses, which is great. We don't need even bigger singleplex, oneplex houses. We got a lot of those. I can get those approved for you easily, no problem. There's also some ways around this that I have some ideas on. But the intent of this was to bonus multiplexes to create more rental housing and not just make a bigger McMansion, which is great. So the prevailing character and all that other stuff, policies in section 4.1.5 of the official plan, all those still apply to oneplexes. And it doesn't encourage you to consider any site a blank slate because, again, trees still exist, and the city is very, very, very keen about maintaining those trees. They will give you flexibility, in theory. The Committee of Adjustment may have different thoughts on that matter, but the city, in theory, will give you flexibility to design around trees. But you shouldn't assume that, oh, I'll just get rid of that tree, it's fine. I would not make that assumption. Okay, so the other part of it was the zoning bylaw amendment changes, and this is where the thing is really long, it's really detailed, it's really friggin' nerdy. I love that stuff. So I'm not gonna go through everything, but depending on the zone that your property is in, so there's, you know, the RD zone, the residential detached, there's the R zone, the world's greatest zoning category. There's RM, there's RS, there's RT. All these zones have slightly different permissions than the new zoning bylaw. But generally speaking, as a starting point, it removes the discrimination that was built into the bylaw that said a multiplex had to be smaller than a single. That's gone. And in some circumstances, frankly, a lot of circumstances, a multiplex can be larger than a single, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So prior to these changes, if you wanted to do a multiplex, this is the part of the city that basically you are limited to. All of the R zone, which is mostly downtown Toronto, and some of the RM zone. The RM is residential multiple, and what they did on top of that is then just put a unit limit. So you could have a triplex so long as it only had 2 units in it. It was very stupid, and it has changed, so now that you can consider multiplexes here. To say that this is a significant increase in the potential of lots in the city of Toronto for multiplexes would truly be an understatement. There are opportunities from border to border to border to border. Like everywhere in the city that is a low-rise zone is now a potential multiplex. That is huge. The opportunity is truly huge. And so I'll talk now briefly about three of the multiplex-specific zoning bonuses that are really going to help you, frankly, not need me, because I get people variances. And this is helping putting me out of work. Great, cool, I don't care, I'll do something else. So the big change, and this is something that people in the industry advocated for when we were going through the consultation with the city. This was not originally on the city's list of things to change. There was resistance to actually changing this, but people who do this stuff for a living said you need to change this, because if you don't, there are neighborhoods where you'll not get a single fucking multiplex if you don't change this, period. So what floor space index is, just in case there's someone who doesn't know, it is the area of the dwelling, the building, versus the area of the lot. And there are parts of the city that have absurdly low FSI limits. Primarily Long Branch, you're looking at parts of Plater Estates, things like that, where you have 0.35 density. Absurdly low. It was designed by the city originally specifically to limit development and trigger variances as a layer of control over what comes next. And so in those areas, especially places like Long Branch, they lose their minds about FSI. If you wanted to take, for example, and this is from experience, if you wanted to take an existing house, a bungalow, and just add a second floor, you're doubling the density. But that existing house was pretty much already at the FSI limit in parts of the city, and they would lose their minds over this. Oh my God! I have another project where a client built totally as of right house. It complied with front yard setback, rear yard setback, side yard setbacks, height, landscaping, everything. It was as of right. He wanted to change the attic space into a bedroom. Triggered an FSI variance. Lost at committee of adjustment. Went to T-Lab. Lost at T-Lab. It's one of a very, very rare case where I lost at T-Lab. One variance for FSI. So he just did nothing and just kept it as an attic, as far as I know. So no impact was generated by FSI that wasn't already contemplated by the bylaw. And so I'm very glad to see this provision gone, because it's a stupid way to limit building size. It's a way to say no to something we're already saying yes to, and I'm glad that it's gone, and you'll be glad that it's gone too when you go to build a multiplex. Building height and the number of stories. So in a lot of the city, you're limited to 2 stories of building height. Well, you can't really do a fourplex with 2 stories, not very easily at least, and not in a way that you would want to. And one of the goals of the city when they were implementing this was that they wanted to make this viable. They didn't want to just throw these changes out there and no one be able to build anything. They wanted to make sure that what changes were made will result in buildings being built. Great. It doesn't happen as often as you would think. And so one of the things they looked at was where are there height limits in the city? And the yellow or the orangish thing is parts of the city where you could already build more than 10 meters height. Great. Those don't change. There's parts of Old Toronto that has 18-meter building height limits. It's amazing. You could build like a 5-story house if you wanted to with no height variance. But in a lot of the city, you're like 8 meters, 8.5 meters, whatever. And that was going to be a problem. And so for multiplexes specifically, and not for singles, there's now a new maximum height limit of 10 meters, which will easily get you 3 stories citywide. And where it's already taller, you can still be taller. That's great. Again, more things you don't need me for, which is fantastic. But this is the one that I like the most, the depth. And when I'm looking at lots, or in theory I'm looking at lots, I have no money to look at lots to buy, but when you are looking at lots, I think this is the good one to maximize the amount of floor area that you'll be able to get in a potential multiplex. So what the city has said is, by default, you're allowed 17 meters of building depth. Previously, you're only allowed 14 meters of building depth because we don't like renters, basically. And so we need to make those units shittier and smaller. So 14 meters building depth, cool, that's all you're allowed. What they've done is they're saying, okay, fine, that was a stupid thing. You're allowed 17 meters building depth because that's what we allow a house to be. Cool. But in certain circumstances, you can go up to 19 meters building depth because we want each of those units to be better. We want them to have more bedrooms, more family size stuff. This is great. And so, but we know that there are a very wide variety of lots in the city. And so they've created essentially 2 different thresholds. For lots that are less than 10 meters wide, if you have a minimum of 36 meters of building depth, you can go 19 meters deep. That's for a single or for a detached building or even a semi. Can't do it for a townhouse though. And if you have a wider lot, you need to have at least 40 meters in building depth. I don't know why they made that distinction, but for whatever reason, they did. And so this is an example in North York, somewhere on Dudley. I just randomly picked an area that had looked like some lot size varieties. And so in the green, the darker green, cool, you can do 19 meters building depth easily because you've got lot widths that are greater than 10 meters, and you've got lot depth that is 40 meters or more. But this neighborhood also has some little tiny narrow lots, but that's cool. That's the lighter green. They're less than 10 meters lot width, but they've got more than 36 meters of lot depth. Cool, you can do 19 meters there. But on these red ones, these are really shallow lots. And the city said, no way, no, you're not doing that. Now, those lots will also have problems with rear yard setback. Those things still apply. So you may not even be able to get 17 meters building depth on a really shallow lot. But you can still do a multiplex. It's just going to be a bit, stubby. In, let's say, West Queen West, where you've got really, really, really narrow lots, like 5-meter lots. But a lot of them are really deep. And so in this little pocket here, off Clinton, you've got a number of lots that are really skinny, but really deep. Lots of opportunity there to do multiplexes. Cities also harmonized the side yard setback requirements and narrowed them so that they're the same as for a house, when before they weren't, because also we have to discriminate against renters. But there's still going to be a lot of lots in these old neighborhoods that don't comply. You also have weird ones like this one, where the north half of it doesn't comply, but it's got this little nubby tail here out the back, and that's your lot depth, so it complies. You can do 19 meters on that lot. This will give you, an extra 6 feet of building depth over all of your floors. I think you'll really be able to maximize the value of the lot and the potential square footage that you can build and get rent on, or if you condoize it, sell. I think this is the key to really looking at looking at what you should be looking at for lots when you're looking to do multiplexes. And that's me. Thank you.